But really, until we rediscover who we are right now and bring in all of the changes that have gone on in ourselves, both positive and negative, then this sense of, formlessness, this unpredictability, uncertainty is just going to make us so much more reactive to another person's behavior, because all we're going to remember is the pain. And we will eventually be able to forgive ourselves for all of the things that we said that really hurt us as much as they hurt the other person to say. If you know in your heart of hearts that the way that you've been approaching your former partner is the same as the way that you've been approaching them during the relationship, and it's still not working, then that is your moment of recognition. If you can hold all those possibilities in the mind, you can feel relaxed. You can choose among them because you can feel your own intuition working at that time. And this experience through cancer really helped me figure that out, and to figure it out in such a way that, I feel clearer. I'm in the best health of my life. I'm able to be, present and available for people in a way that I wasn't able to before. And that is really the gift. And I think these fears and what we talk about ourselves, there's a real opportunity for self-forgiveness. Let go of trying to make anything of these days more than you feel capable of, and giving yourself that space to not do anything.
Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. Hi, I'm Karen Oman, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I draw on years of personal and professional experience to guide you through the challenges of your divorce. Together, with our expert guests, we'll equip you with the clarity, resilience, and tools to take charge and move forward with confidence. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many different facets of divorce. Hi, welcome to the Just Separated podcast. I'm your host, Karen Oman, co-founder of Divorce Workshop. Today we're going to talk about practical reflective practices for navigating post-divorce parenting relationships. And our expert guest is Richard Brydson. Richard has been an accredited family mediator and a life coach specializing in conflict for the past 8 years and in mental health roles supporting families since 2013. After coming back from an extended health leave in 2024, Richard transitioned his practice to focus only on parenting issues as a mediator, as well as continuing to offer conflict coaching and wellness support to clients. He has recently finished writing a book about the benefits of reflective practice in living a healing life. Moving with and through the unwanted conflict that comes into our lives prepares us for a much better future than we had possibly envisioned for ourselves. Welcome, Richard, to the Just Separated podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. Really glad to be here and to be talking with you again. It's been too long.
Yeah, it's been too long, Richard. So before we get into the heart of this reflective practices in post-divorce, I want to acknowledge something powerful you had shared, that your journey through stage 4 cancer, your survival, gave you deep insight into the value of this work. Can you tell us a little bit about how this experience shaped your approach to conflict, healing, and coaching families through difficult transitions?
So the most important part of this is, for all of the years that I spent, working on myself, learning about how to deal with conflict in relationship, dropping what was not really that important in the end so that I could really be present with those that I was working with. When, it was an emergency for me. I needed emergency surgery, and it saved my life. It was an ordeal that I wouldn't wish on anybody. But on the more emotional side of it, I suddenly had no access to any of that lived experience anymore. It was almost like I was starting from square one all over again. And that was incredibly difficult, not only for me, but also for my family, because I didn't used to know how to regulate very well. And I had to do a lot of introspective work. I had to do a lot of soul searching over the years, and a lot of difficult conversations that I had to show up in a new way in. So all of a sudden, all of that was gone. And, it took a few months to build that knowledge back up, to build the capacity back up to be able to, handle these things. And I think that the part of it that was analogous to, or at least similar to what, is happening for people when they're separating, is this feeling of really not being able to cope, not having enough energy to wake up in the morning. Just all of a sudden, you need to focus on the most important things, right? Because, your very life depends on it. Your children depend on you. And all of these possibilities, like we can get lost in our own mind when all of that is going on. And it can zap whatever energy that we have. So that's what my reflective practice came back in was I really had to take ownership for my experience again, because my relationships were not doing well. And even though I was receiving the support that I needed, I also needed to recognize that there was a big part of this that I really could do. And returning to that faith and that self-understanding that it was possible was, not so much just the mindset change. Like my mind had to be set on something, more than just the immediate, more than just this decision that had to be made, so that surrender, that act of love, was something that I really had to reconnect with. And this experience through cancer really helped me figure that out, and to figure it out in such a way that, I feel clearer. I'm in the best health of my life. I'm able to be, present and available for people in a way that I wasn't able to before. And like, that is really the gift of this kind of self-inquiry, is that it's not going to give you immediate gains, but over time, a practice like this, if your intention is pure, if your doubt in just one moment is just non-existent, no doubt, just know that you can do this. And that's my availability. That's what I would love to talk to people about, on this journey. I think that when it comes to a reflective and a meditation practice, is that you have, like, how you're making decisions in the present moment is probably a lot to do, definitely, with both of your personal and your professional experiences. And it dawned on me how relevant it was to, just all of the emotional reporting and all of the emotional, all of the things that people had been telling me for years, just kind of lined up. And I was just like, this, sense of inertia, this sense of, I don't know how I'm possibly going to move forward. I think that really being able to slow things down, because we know all of the things, like we can only make one decision at a time, like multitasking doesn't really exist, so really being able to slow things down to the point where we can see with enough clarity is what saved my life, because I was not making good decisions. And I wasn't able to, at first I wasn't able to slow things down in the way that I had before. And it's all well and good to say, like, well, just pause. But really, until we really allow ourselves to be overwhelmed by our emotional experience, we're just locked in anxiety about all of the different possibilities. So that invitation, welcome that fear, let it come up all the way and experience it, because until you go down and feel that, you're going to be trying to work your way out of it. And the thing is those thoughts and those that are coming and stuff like that, they are that experience. Until you feel it, it's not going to change. And you really can't figure out anxiety. You need to actually experience it fully. And if you experience it fully, um, like you have a real possibility of changing it. Like it really, it can change all by itself in just 1 second. So that's why it's really relevant, like whatever a person is going through, especially in divorce, especially when, a loved one is, like their life is in danger. Like these are the hardest, human situations that we deal with, like when, like children are at risk, like when we feel that their future is being compromised by the behavior of the other parent. That's why we're getting involved in, this process in the first place. Like there's so many different applications, and knowing that the application is going to work is more based on, like about actually having done this kind of work with people. I haven't necessarily done it so much with people who are, um, together in a room. This is a one-on-one practice for the most part. But the way that I've seen it work is you work one-on-one with both parties. You increase their self-awareness. You maybe, I don't suggest new ways of doing things, but I just help them to maybe question their certainty enough that when they have a little bit of manageable doubt, then suddenly they something dawns on them, and that has been, you know like it's been across the board. Everybody who has done this has been able to show some benefit, and I just know that if the energy and the inclination was there to keep going, that, like this could be a really revolutionary practice for their lives. So I guess that's where my knowledge comes from, is from actually having done it myself, but also the experiences that I've had with clients who are trying to, work on their relationships, who are trying to show up in a new way. Because even after divorce, this is a new kind of relationship, one that you have to figure out for yourself, and that you can't possibly know how to do it right. So with all of those uncertainties, being able to be here in the present moment is just the most important thing possible. I couldn't, stress that more.
Do you think that, generally humans, we like to avoid pain? We like to, it's pretty commonly used in the grief world. We avoid because we don't want to go there, and it's one of the things I look for with a lot. Do you think that happens also with having to have your own responsibility in co-parenting? Like look at your own self to see what you're actually are responsible for. To maybe this situation, this co-parenting relationship isn't very good. Does this make
It does
sense?
make sense. There's, like when you're going through the process of grief, when we're letting go of a relationship, like so many people come to, like, me over the years, and they're not sure that they want to separate. Or they know that they're sure, but then they really feel into those thoughts, and then they're like, there's this doubt, like, how do I actually come to the point where, I feel like I know exactly what I need to do? And when it comes to these kinds of, irreversible life decisions, there really isn't a way to know exactly how it's going to work out. So, and I think that, through our pain of living in the relationship and our desire to be free of that, we can see that one of the most clear ways of doing that is moving on. And this decision is, like if it's your truth, then at some point it's going to feel like the right choice. But right away, through the early part of the separation, it's just going to feel like really, really not good. And I think that acknowledging that there is going to be pain if you stay and if you go, that there's no real way to avoid it. And I think that in, accepting this reality and actually going into those experiences, because grief is the most complex human experience that there is. There are just so many different facets to it. And, with some relationships, it takes, especially if we've been together for a long time, this might be a lifelong practice of grieving the end of that relationship, because new memories are always resurfacing, new things that were not fully lived, parts of yourself that you denied, that like you're unsure if you can bring them back into your life. All these kinds of things are going to be coming up at that time. And it's easy, or it seems easy, to just keep moving on. But really, it just increases the chaos that we live in. And one thing that I know about, about this practice of, welcoming the worst possibilities, is that really underneath it all, like, we are pretty indestructible when it comes to these emotional experiences. Even after everything that we've gone through, we still want to live. Like, we still want to connect. We still want a lot of things. So even with the memory of all of this pain, we're still here. And that recognition, like, we still want to live this life. And if this life is as precious as we say it is, then the only way to live it to the fullest is by going into these things. And, hopefully you won't have to do it like I did, which was my life very, really did depend on it. And without these practices, I wouldn't be here. I know that. So if your very life depends on you showing up in the way that you intuitively feel is right for you, whether that's staying or going, you're always going to have a little bit of doubt. But being able to manage that doubt and see clearly is the possibility of this kind of work. Because until you're, fire tested by going into these things, welcoming that worst of possibilities and really feeling it, you really won't feel your power to transcend anything that comes your way.
So my question is then, so when in your journey in the last year did you have that moment? Like, since we're talking about, people not knowing, they're swaying whether to leave or go, or when did you know that you had to change things?
I think when I knew how to change things was when I had you come up against a rock and a hard place. Like, you come up against a scenario that that you've made a mistake, and that mistake could have cost you your life. And, like, that I didn't listen to medical opinion. I went off in my own way, and I reacted. I was angry. I was scared. All of those kinds of things, like, understandable considering all of what I was going through, but really recognizing that if I continued in the way that I had been, that, like, things were not going to go well for me, and then using that recognition, like the grief at the fear at almost not making it because of this, that's a really salient moment, in a person's life. And I think the application for this, for, those who are going through separation and divorce, is if you know in your heart of hearts that the way that you've been approaching your former partner is the same as the way that you've been approaching them during the relationship, and it's still not working, then that is your moment of recognition. That's your moment of recognition that now is the time to try something else, and to not, start with them. It's to start with you. Find out which of your values are playing. What in your experience are you not bringing out? Like, what have you sacrificed in this relationship that you never communicated to them? Because that's grief as well. and we can build up a lot of resentment over time, and really until we go through, feeling into that stuff. And it doesn't need to be all with a professional or with a coach or whatever. A coach can help you to a certain degree to tell you how it happens. Like, this is how you do the work. But ultimately, you have to do the work. And it's not supposed to take forever. It doesn't take years to learn how to do this, because we're doing it every day anyways. We're just not doing it consciously. So, I mean, that's what I would really love people to hear, is that this is a life practice. This isn't just for dealing with separation. This is going to help you live well for as long as you possibly can in all of those ways. No perfection in sight. Your ideals will change. Your dreams will once again be possible. But really, until you learn how to conserve your energy from those things that you cannot change, mostly with the other person's behavior, you show up differently. You give them a possibility to see you maybe as you were in a lot of ways. You can show understanding, not because they deserve it, but because it's how you want to be. And I think returning to that, sense of self-responsibility, or, it's not like we've lost responsibility. We're hurting. We're grieving an immense loss that we can't possibly fathom yet. So all of those experiences, all of those reactions are okay. And we will eventually be able to forgive ourselves for all of the things that we said that really hurt us as much as they hurt the other person to say. So this is a really big opportunity to become tender, to become vulnerable in a way that, that you're acting in the best possible way that you can. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not going to be the possibility of being hurt again by the other person, because at first they may not respond. And if they are somebody who you really do need to have safety from, because the behavior is probably not going to change over time, like they're not going to see it, then I can understand there's going to be not necessarily tenderness, but resoluteness. You can at least be clear. You can at least be calm in the face of the storm that is coming, so that you know yourself, you know what you're going to do, and you know what you're not going to accept. So, I mean, the applications are limitless, absolutely limitless.
Can you give the listeners an example of a practice that they could use?
So I've already alluded to, inviting the most unspeakable thing was the most, revolutionary for me, because when it really helps unlock those aspects of our identity that we can't notice very easily, because they come up in a spark of anger and we react. But really being able to see, what's happening, maybe even unpack how we've decided in the past that we're going to deal with somebody when they treat us poorly. Because after an experience of pain, because we don't want to experience pain, we will remember exactly what our self-talk was after we've had the painful experience. So whatever that self-talk was is going to be part of our reaction that we can't control afterwards. So inviting that unspeakable thing, like that, that word that just creeps up our spine when they say it, what is it about that word? Like, what is my history with that? And if you let that up all the way, like, over time, re-experiencing this, it won't bother you so much. or at least you'll start to integrate those little pieces of the experience that seem intolerable to the point where, well, maybe you still feel a little bit warm when somebody says it, but it's not going to create the same, unpredictable reaction that we feel terrible afterwards. Like we feel guilty for acting in that way afterwards, So like, I know I've alluded to it a couple of times, and I hope that I hope my meaning and my intention is coming across here, because if there was any other way to do this, then I wouldn't invite people into experiencing these difficult experiences. But I know that it has more value than just about anything. Now, when it comes to like a more specific practice, there can be breath work for sure, because really, as soon as we feel ourselves, as soon as we feel like we're unable to regulate, our thinking is not going to be as clear. Like we are going to jump to conclusions. We're going to look for a way out. And the thing is there is no way out of your experience. There's no way out of experience, like a way out of your experience except by living it. So you live your experience. The degree to which you can live your experience is going to be the degree that you can bring into focus and bring into reality what you intend. And I don't think I can say it any simpler than that.
Mm. Do you think that when you were saying that, I'm wondering if people could write it down, a pattern that we always talk in the divorce world is, what is the ex patterns of bad behavior? What is their patterns of behavior? Have you ever thought of what is your
Yeah.
patterns of behavior, right? Like, why are you triggering with this, right? Like there's also I want to touch down about the responsibility of your own co-parenting, like
Yeah.
on yourself, right? Like if this is a healing journey, right? And you need to heal yourself as well. And I think we in the divorce world, we kind of always want to say, well, they have to change, or, and they're not the very good parent. And what we're saying here too, though, what I hear you saying is there's some type of inner reflection work on yourself. One of leaning into the grief, which is always recommended if you can, but also like taking some form of knowledge or guidance of what you're saying about yourself or your body is saying, because your body will be responding, like you said, you trigger. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It
That's
does.
what I
And like
thought.
what it made me think of is that, like I see life as a journey of learning. Like these times in our lives are meant to show us, what's not working, but also our own capacity to bring something, new into the world, to be able to actually shift. And I think when it comes to this real possibility of feeling okay in the face of the unimaginable, like there's a real possibility of understanding ourselves and understanding that the other person's behavior is probably going to stay the same.
The patterns that we see, we always in the divorce world, we always kind of say, look for the patterns of bad behavior with your ex, right? And so we do that all the time, except I think a question that we can all ask ourselves as well is, what are our patterns of behavior? What triggers us, right? And so I think also if you could write it down if you get triggered, or the healing journey is not just about the becoming a co-parent with this ex. It's also about your learning to work through your stuff as well as what can help you heal through this.
And
I don't know what your thoughts
and
about that.
the journey of learning and the writing practices. I mean, like, like over time, grown to, like really feel the value and the importance of writing practices. Like I don't necessarily use it when it comes to like my own self-inquiry, but my wife, who also does, similar mindset work with dissertation students, I mean, she's been using writing as a way of healing for a long time. So that, like, as long as it's not too much of an intellectualization, as long as we're actually like really feeling what we're writing at the same time, then I don't see a difference between, like a more meditative self-inquiry, like internal work kind of way that I'm talking about. I don't see a difference as long as we're actually feeling it at the same time. And maybe it's a good place to start because there's a way of kind of channeling something. And, like if this thought that, oh, I'm going to welcome everything right away, like if that's, a no go for you, then writing practices like a way of, bringing into, bringing into consciousness slowly at a time that that these are your patterns. But I think what's also important about this journey of learning is I think that when things don't turn out as we intend, like when we start this kind of work, like what was really difficult for me at the beginning and for many years afterwards was dealing with the reality that I wasn't going to be able to accomplish what I set out to do. And all of the self-talk that I had built up over time. Like if we've become settled in who we are in a relationship, and then that relationship destabilizes and breaks up, then our sense of self is, we can't go back. So really, until we do some of this work a little bit at a time, it doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be more than you can handle at any one point. Like I would encourage people to, push the boundaries a little bit over time just to feel this out. But really, until we rediscover who we are right now and bring in all of the changes that have gone on in ourselves, both positive and negative, then this sense of, formlessness, this unpredictability, uncertainty is just going to make us so much more reactive to another person's behavior because all we're going to remember is the pain. But I don't think that that pain is there to show us how, horrible life can be. I think that it's there to make sure that we really value every possible moment and recognize that, like we can live the best possible life. There is hope. There is the possibility of connection after separation. And there's the possibility of really living well, even though that possibility just might seem so far-fetched, early on. It does change. It will change. But you showing up to change for yourself and for your kids, at the same time, you're going to be the person on this that is going to support all those around you at some point because you will have gone through your grief. And those who have gone through grief, and really, really lived it, like these are light bringers. Like these are really dynamic people who, are in all of their relationships. Like they're showing up for others in a way that feels great, and it's not just the altruism. It's like, like you're finally living that life that you tried to bring into your marriage. You tried to show up in these ways and it didn't work. But you know what? That love that you have inside of you, it can be for a lot of other people. It doesn't have to be romantic love. It can just be like, this is me. This is who I am. And I love life. Just fill your life with wonderful things. And I can't think of a better way to live than knowing that when I wake up every morning, like I know what I'm going to be involved in that day. It's going to be great. Like I might not have time for everything that I want, but if I only have a half an hour to do something for me or for somebody else, really being able to feel into exactly what that is, is going to be like a life practice for knowing that you can do things, like you can bring goodness into a world that's fallen apart. It just is possible.
Would you say then, like for people that are listening and they're just separated, that it sounds like what you're saying is that set some intention
Yeah.
for the day?
Yeah. Like I do think that intentions are important, and maybe when I use the word faith, it's going to sound different to different people. I don't think that it necessarily has to have religious connotations or always spiritual connotations, but however you feel your sense of self, if that sense of self is grounded, whether or not it be secular or spiritual or religious, that is going to be the basis for your good life. And the intentions that are kind of, they're the active part of this recognition. So when you're doing your writing practice or you're doing your inquiry, there's a part of you that isn't changing. And that part of you imbues all of your thoughts and feelings with, the sense of, like this is mine. This is what tells me that I am who I am. And those things will change over time. And when they do change, it creates, it creates, some tension, especially when we're separating, because there's a big part of our identity that is lost in it. But finding yourself through this process, whether or not it be the two ways that we've talked about writing and about inquiry, is that sense of self is going to, like, it's there. You don't need to do anything to make it come out in your life. All you need to do is feel it and believe that it's there. And then your intentions can come afterwards. Your intentions can come from your dreams. Like, I dream this possible, like I'm afraid of this happening. But if you have that underpinning of self-knowledge, you're able to actually find the energy to intend something for that day. Like, like running a business and having a full-time job at the same time, having like living with another person, really, there are so many demands on you. So, if you are in a state of confusion at any one point, it's because you have a lot of different things that you want to do. But you can really be present, and you can really boil it down to the point where you can feel into, like, okay, so like I'm looking at all these different possibilities. If you can hold all those possibilities in the mind, you can feel relaxed. You can choose among them because you can feel your own intuition working at that time. And I think that, like there's no better way to get to a point where we're going to feel like we're actually living our best life, we're being our best selves, then in that process of being able to choose without really choosing, you're not stressing about it. You're like going, okay, like I'm all of these possibilities. Well, those ones I don't really like that much, and that one I don't really like that much, but this one speaks to me. Like I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna see what happens, right? Because whether or not we go into something or we don't, I think the most intrinsic part of ourselves really doesn't change at all.
Would you say that, last question though, but would you say that this reflective practice, is it, as you said, it's a lifelong, but is it you, I believe, and I know you're going to agree with me, it is kind of unique for
Mm-hmm.
everybody, right? And it takes time and stuff. This is not a, in your own journey, it
Yeah.
took time. So it takes time for everybody,
Absolutely.
correct?
And really, it's unpredictable how much time it takes for one person over another one. I mean, like coming from somebody like with my own life experiences, I did not make great, decisions in my 20s, and I go into, some of these things in the book that I wrote with my wife. Um, because I really think it's important when we're talking about our personal journeys of, transition and transcendence, that we acknowledge that, like where we have come from and what we have dealt with is only part of what we're, it's only part of what is going to be part of this uh, process of learning and process of change. And when it comes to some people are just going to be able to do it a little bit faster than us. Like for me, from the first day that I started to self-inquiry to today is 13 years, So, I mean, and perhaps somebody is able to do it in a year, like that they just get it right away, and they're able to just like snap it into port. But like being able to, this isn't a process of learning how to do something new. Like you don't, you may need a little bit of guidance on how to make the right choices, but ultimately, how to live the life you want to live. There are just way too many different possibilities, way too many demands that are cycling through you at that moment. And it's deeply confusing and troubling. So really being able to clear the field as much as possible is what these practices will give you, because you've lived a good life, at a lot of points in your life, not completely acknowledging all of the pain, but you've been able to live a good life in a lot of ways. I hope that there is the recognition that even though there's been a lot of difficulties, that it has been there, but knowing how to access that kind of information when we're at our lowest energy, when there's a seeming impossibility to think of a positive future for ourselves and for, like our like our futures of having a family after what we've been through, with all of those fears and uncertainties, like this possibility of just quieting down, just stopping for a second and really, really feeling into that, whether it be through writing or whether it just be through feeling it all the way. Like it is going to work. And the degree to which you believe it is going to be the degree at any one point is going to be the degree to which you will be able to bring it into your own life.
I love that. So, before we wrap up, do you have anything you want to say before I ask the last question?
Sure. And, just because I'm noticing I'm about to run out of battery power, maybe I'll just close by saying that, like I have, I have written a book with my wife, because of our experiences together, my, um, not just through my, dealing with cancer, but also because of all of the life experiences that we brought. We were very, very different people in ways. And, like there has been a lot of things that have helped us connect over the years, but how we learn how to surrender what is not important, and how we learn how to really bring into our lives what is most important to us is kind of what this book is about. And I really think that this life is for healing. This life is for living well. And I know that the practices that I've talked about today have value in bringing out all of those possibilities. So um, it will eventually be published. Right now, it's before editing, so we're hoping the end of the year, but it might be a little bit after that. But I hope to come back and talk to you again when things come more into being, and then like maybe we'll talk a little bit more deeply about like the book and how it can work with those who are dealing with separation and divorce.
Yeah, I'd love that. So I'm going to quickly just ask the last question I asked
Mhm.
for everybody. For someone who's just separated, whether they left or were left, what advice would you give them to help them navigate those overwhelming early days?
Those overwhelming early days. Um, there are there are simple ways of taking care of ourselves, and these things might be considered coping strategies or whatnot, but they might be feared to a certain degree. Like they're just going to become too, like we're going to get stuck. And I think these fears and what we talk about ourselves, like there's a real opportunity for self-forgiveness. Like let go of trying to make anything of these days more than you feel capable of. And giving yourself that space to not do anything, and to, like feel the guilt. Like it's like you're going to feel terrible for not being able to do the things that you feel like you could be doing. But really, there's no other way to be with it. Like you can't do more at that point. So maybe you only have a half an hour of energy to really do something good for yourself or others. So recognize how much energy you really do have on any particular day. And if you don't feel like doing something that day, then don't do it. Like you have to recognize that your health, your wellness needs to be there first. Otherwise you can't show up. Like you can't care for others in the way that you did before this happened to you.
Yeah, that's great advice. So where can they get in touch with you, Richard, and tell them about your services?
So people can, find me at alignchoices.com. That's my mediator website. I also have a new one called Healing Life Coach.ca. Those are two possibilities. But really, like there's also Instagram, like where I talk most about the book and really just about some of these ways that like I was able to return to full health and to return to a good place. And like I might be talking it through the lens of cancer, but I really do feel like it will apply to those who are dealing with, like separation and divorce, so like who are coming out of something that, like they didn't want or they wanted, but they don't know how to deal with now that they feel the impact of their statement that I want to separate, like all of those feelings that are coming up. Like this is the time to live your best life, and to, in the moments in between you're living all of those experiences, to go back and to check in and to make sure you're not leaving something unseen from the past, because it is going to come back into your life. So live the best possible relationship you can with yourself, and you will live the best possible relationship you can with others.
Well put. Your true inspiration, the passion I hear from your voice, made me think about my life too and how I need to work on it as well. And I think everyone needs to hear your story, Richard. And I'm being honest about that because it's a true inspiration for anything we're going through, not just divorce and separation, which is really tough, but what you've gone through and others have gone through in this world, we're all faced with a lot of stuff. And what you said today is pretty accurate and need us all to be reminded or learned, right? So I want to thank you so much for coming on. I would love to have you on when the book comes out,
Fantastic.
if you're willing. And thank you,
very welcome.
Thank you, Richard,
and thank you so much
for
your kind words. It really resonates, and thank you again. And I hope to see you very soon.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for joining today's discussion with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guest. If you're finding value in our podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel at Divorce Workshop. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. For a comprehensive divorce guide, check out our Just Separated workbook on Amazon worldwide. This workbook covers everything from emotions and co-parenting to finances, legal insights, and recovery, a must-have for anyone navigating separation or divorce.